Excuse me, excuse me. The woman's voice sliced through the luxury cabin like a knife through silk. That is my seat. Dr. Amara Kingston looked up from fastening her daughter's seatbelt, her fingers pausing mid-click. The woman standing in the aisle wore a cream Chanel suit, her blonde hair pulled into a severe bun that seemed to physically pull her eyebrows into permanent judgment. Behind her, other first-class passengers craned their necks, sensing drama brewing at 30,000 feet, or rather, before they'd even left the ground. I'm sorry, Amara's voice remained steady, though her 6-year-old daughter Zoe pressed closer to her side. That seat. The woman pointed a manicured finger at 1A, the window seat where Zoe sat, clutching her stuffed elephant. I paid extra for that specific seat. I always sit in 1A. I have status with this airline. The cabin fell silent. Even the flight attendants preparing for departure seemed to freeze, their practiced smiles flickering like faulty lights. Amara felt the weight of every eye in first class, felt the familiar tightness in her chest that came with these moments, the ones where she had to decide how much of herself to diminish to make others comfortable. I understand, Amara said carefully, her Johns Hopkins medical training kicking in, that clinical calm she used in the ER when chaos erupted. But this is our assigned seat, see? She held up her phone, showing their boarding passes clearly marked 1A and 1B. The woman didn't even glance at the screen. There must be some mistake. I'll get the flight attendant to sort this out. You'll need to move. Behind them, a man in an expensive suit muttered something to his companion. Amara caught the words entitled and probably upgraded with miles. Her jaw tightened. Zoe tugged on her sleeve. Mommy, what's wrong? Nothing, baby. Everything's fine. But nothing was fine. And everything was about to change in ways no one on that private jet could possibly imagine. Where are you from? Tell us in the comments below. And if you're loving this story, hit that like button and subscribe for more. Dr. Amara Kingston had learned early that brilliance wasn't always enough. She'd grown up in Atlanta, the daughter of 2 public school teachers who'd scraped together every penny for her education. While other kids played after school, Amara sat in the public library, devouring medical journals she barely understood, dreaming of the day she'd walk hospital corridors in a white coat bearing her name. She'd graduated top of her class at Spelman, full scholarship to Johns Hopkins Medical School, chief resident in emergency medicine by 32. She delivered bobbies in thunderstorms when the power went out, talked down suicide attempts at 3 a.m., saved lives with hands that never trembled even when her heart raced with fear. But none of that mattered in moments like this. The flight attendant approached, a young woman named Sophie whose smile had shifted from professional to apologetic. Is everything all right here? No, everything is not all right. The blonde woman, her name tag read attendant call, Mrs. Patricia Whitmore, stepped forward. I specifically booked seat 1A 6 weeks ago. I have confirmation. These people are in my seat. These people... Amara felt Zoe stiffen against her. Her daughter was brilliant, reading at a 4th grade level, already asking questions about biology and space that made Amara's heart soar. But she was also sensitive, already noticing the way people sometimes looked at them differently, asked where they were really from, touched her hair without permission. Ma'am, I can check, Sophie began. I don't need you to check, I need you to move them. Patricia's voice rose. I paid for premium seats, I have elite status, I fly this route monthly for business, I should not have to deal with this situation. Sophie pulled out her tablet, fingers flying across the screen, her brow furrowed. Mrs. Whitmore, according to our system, seats 1A and 1B were reassigned yesterday evening. Your original booking was moved to... Reassigned by WHO, I never authorized that. It appears to have been done by someone with executive clearance. Sophie's voice dropped, her eyes widening slightly as she read something on her screen. I want to speak to the captain, right now. But before Sophie could respond, a voice crackled over the intercom, smooth, authoritative, with just a hint of amusement. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We'll be departing shortly. I do ask that all passengers take their assigned seats so we can. I am in MYASSIGNED seat. Patricia shouted, loud enough that people in the main cabin could hear. Amara closed her eyes briefly. This was supposed to be a surprise, a perfect surprise. Marcus had been planning it for months, the jet, the trip to Martha's vineyard for Zoe's birthday, the whole elaborate weekend. And now this woman was turning it into a spectacle. "Mommy, I can move," Zoe whispered. "I don't want the lady to be mad." Something in Amara's chest cracked. Not broke. She was too strong for that, had weathered too many storms. But cracked, like ice before the spring thaw. Because this was the lesson she refused to teach her daughter. That they should shrink themselves to make others comfortable, that their space in the world was always negotiable, always conditional. "No, baby, we're not moving." Amara's voice was quiet but firm. She looked up at Patricia. "These are our seats. If there's been a mistake with your booking, I'm sure the staff can help you find another seat. But we are not moving." Patricia's face flushed crimson. "Do you have any idea who I am? My husband is a senior VP at Morrison Financial. We practically keep this airline in business. One phone call and I can make sure you never fly first class again." "Ma'am, please," Sophie pleaded. "If you could just—" "Where's the manifest? Show me the booking name. I want to see who had the authority to bump me from my seat." Sophie hesitated, her fingers hovering over her tablet. She glanced at Amara with an expression that might have been recognition, might have been understanding, might have been fear of what was about to unfold. "The booking name is, it's Kingston, Dr. Kingston and guest." "Kingston?" Patricia whipped around to face the cabin, addressing the other passengers like a prosecutor making her case. "Does anyone here know a Dr. Kingston? Does anyone know why this random doctor and her child should get MY seat on MY usual flight?" The silence that followed was suffocating. Amara felt the familiar heat rising up her neck. Not embarrassment, but fury carefully controlled, channeled, compressed into the tight space behind her ribs. She'd spent years perfecting this control in hospital rooms when senior doctors questioned her diagnoses, in academic conferences where colleagues assumed she was a nurse, in department stores where security followed her through aisles. "I'm not random," Amara said quietly, "and I have just as much right to this seat as you do." "Rights," Patricia laughed, a sharp, brittle sound. "Let me tell you about rights. I have the right to the seat I paid for. I have the right to fly in peace without dealing with people who think they can just take whatever they want because of." She stopped, but the unspoken words hung in the air like smoke. Sophie's face had gone pale. "Mrs. Whitmore, I really must insist." "You must insist, you must insist." Patricia's voice climbed higher. "I've been flying with this airline for 15 years, 15 years. I have platinum status. I have earned preferential treatment. And now you're telling me I have to give up my seat to accommodate. What exactly? Is this some kind of diversity initiative, some quota system?" The man in the expensive suit shifted uncomfortably. A woman across the aisle pretended to be very interested in her magazine. A teenage boy pulled out his phone. Whether to text or record, Amara couldn't tell. "That's enough." Amara's voice cut through the cabin, sharp as surgical steel. She stood, carefully moving Zoe behind her. At 5'9", she met Patricia's eyes directly. "You need to stop talking right now." "Excuse me, are you threatening me?" "I'm asking you, very politely, to stop making assumptions about who I am, why I'm here, and what I deserve. You don't know me. You don't know my daughter. And you certainly don't know the full situation." Patricia stepped closer, invading Amara's space. She smelled like expensive perfume and entitlement. "I know exactly what I need to know. I know that I booked this seat. I know that you're sitting in it. And I know that certain people think the rules don't apply to them." "Certain people?" Amara repeated the words slowly, tasting their venom. "Say what you mean." "I mean people who—" "Who what? People who are black? Is that what you're trying not to say?" The cabin gasped collectively. Patricia's eyes widened. "I never said, how dare you make this about race? This is about a seat assignment. This is about MY seat." "Then why did you assume I didn't pay for it? Why did you call me random? Why did you suggest I was here because of a quota?" Sophie had backed away, frantically typing on her tablet, probably calling for backup. The captain's voice crackled over the intercom again. Sophie, status report, please. But Sophie couldn't respond because Patricia was now in full fury, her carefully constructed composure crumbling. You people always do this. Always play the race card when you don't get your way. I work hard for everything I have. My family built our wealth through dedication and integrity, not through handouts or special treatment. You people, Amara's voice was dangerously quiet now. You just said you people. I meant entitled people. People who think they can waltz into first class and take whatever they want. My mother is a doctor, Zoe's small voice piped up from behind Amara. She saves people's lives. She's not entitled. She's the nicest person in the whole world. Patricia glanced down at Zoe as if just remembering she existed. I'm sure your mother is very nice, sweetie, but sometimes nice people make mistakes. Sometimes they end up in places they don't belong. The words landed like a slap. Amara felt Zoe flinch behind her. We don't belong here? Amara's hands were shaking now, and she curled them into fists. You think we don't belong in first class? I think, Patricia said, straightening her Chanel jacket, that you should check your ticket again, because I guarantee there's been some kind of mistake. Maybe you're supposed to be in economy. Maybe this is a system error. But I know I booked 1A, and I know I'm not giving it up to someone who probably can't even afford. Can't afford what? Amara's voice could have cut diamonds. Can't afford first class, can't afford to fly private, can't afford to exist in your presence. A door opened at the front of the cabin. A tall man in a pilot's uniform emerged, his expression serious. Behind him, another man followed, older, distinguished, wearing an expensive suit that screamed executive authority. What seems to be the problem here? The pilot asked, though his eyes were fixed on Amara with an expression she couldn't quite read. Patricia whirled on him. Finally, Captain, I need you to check the manifest. These people are in my seat, that I specifically booked 6 weeks ago. The captain glanced at his tablet. Seats 1A and 1B are correctly assigned to Dr. Kingston and her daughter. That's impossible. There must be an error in your system. There's no error, ma'am. Then someone made an unauthorized change to my reservation. Someone bumped me without my permission. Is that how you treat your most loyal customers? Is this your company policy now, to prioritize random people over established clients? The man in the suit stepped forward, and Amara noticed his credentials badge. James Morrison, VP of Flight Operations. Mrs. Whitmore, I'm going to need you to lower your voice and return to your assigned seat. My assigned seat is 1A. That's what I'm trying to tell you people. Why is no one listening to me? Your seat was reassigned yesterday at 6:47 p.m. You were sent a notification email and text message. You're now in seat 3C. 3C, middle seat. Are you kidding me? Who authorized this change? Morrison and the captain exchanged glances. Someone with executive override clearance. I want a name right now. I want to know who had the audacity to bump Patricia Whitmore, PATRICIAWHITMOR, from her first-class window seat to a middle seat. Do you understand that my husband personally knows your CEO? Do you understand that I will have someone's job over this? Amara had heard enough. Zoe, come here, baby. She gathered her daughter close, preparing to diffuse the situation the only way she knew how, by being the bigger person, by swallowing her pride, by doing what she'd done 1,000 times before. You know what? Amara said quietly. We'll move, it's fine. Come on, Zoe, let's go sit somewhere else. No, Zoe clung to her seat. Daddy said this was our special surprise. He said we get the window seats because I like to see the clouds. Patricia's lips curled into a triumphant smile. See, even the child understands. This was clearly some kind of gift or surprise that wasn't properly authorized. Someone probably pulled strings they shouldn't have pulled, but rules are rules. Mrs. Whitmore, Morrison said, his voice tight with warning. I'm going to ask you one more time to take your assigned seat in 3C. Not until I get an explanation. Not until someone tells me why this random doctor and her daughter get preferential treatment over a 15-year platinum member. Not until. Because, a new voice said from the entrance of the cabin, deep and calm and carrying the weight of absolute authority, this isn't your airplane. Every head turned. Standing in the doorway, still wearing his flight suit but with his helmet tucked under his arm, was a man who made the cabin feel suddenly smaller. He was 6'3", with rich dark skin, close-cropped hair going gray at the temples, and eyes that held both warmth and warning. His presence filled the space like a change in air pressure. "This is MY Airplane," he said, walking into the cabin. "And those are MY wife and daughter you're harassing." The silence was absolute. Patricia's mouth opened and closed like a fish suddenly pulled from water. The color drained from her face, then flooded back in splotches of red. "Your wife." "Dr. Amara Kingston," the man said, moving to stand beside Amara and placing a protective hand on her shoulder. "My wife of 8 years, mother of my daughter, and the woman you just spent 10 minutes verbally abusing in front of a cabin full of witnesses." Morrison had gone very still, his expression shifting from diplomatic to deeply concerned. The captain was staring at the man in the flight suit with something approaching horror. "Mr. Kingston," Morrison said carefully, "I apologize, I didn't realize." "Didn't realize what, James? That the black woman in first class might actually belong there, that she might have paid for her ticket, that she might not be some charity case or system error." Amara felt her husband's hand tighten on her shoulder, not in anger at her, but in solidarity, in shared fury at every microaggression, every assumption, every moment like this they'd weathered together. Patricia found her voice, though it came out strangled. I didn't know, she didn't say anything, she didn't mention." "Didn't mention what?" Amara turned to face Patricia fully now, her voice steady as bedrock. "Didn't mention that my husband is Captain Marcus Kingston, one of the most decorated pilots in commercial aviation. Didn't mention that before he flew commercial, he flew fighter jets for the Navy. Didn't drop his name like a weapon to defend my right to exist in a space I paid for." I didn't mean." "Yes, you did." Marcus's voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of absolute certainty. "You meant every word. You meant it when you called my wife random. You meant it when you suggested she was here because of a diversity quota. You meant it when you said she probably couldn't afford to fly first class. You absolutely meant it when you told my 6-year-old daughter that some people end up in places they don't belong." Zoe peeked out from behind Amara. "Hi, Daddy," the mean lady was yelling. Marcus crouched down, his imposing frame folding with practiced ease. "I know, Princess, I heard. Are you okay?" "I'm okay, but she made Mommy sad, and she said we don't belong here." Marcus stood slowly, his jaw tight. When he looked at Patricia, his expression was carved from granite. "My daughter is 6 years old, 6, and you just taught her that lesson, the one every black parent dreads teaching. You taught her that people will look at her skin and decide she doesn't belong, that her presence will be questioned, that she'll have to justify her existence in spaces where others move freely." "I never said anything about race. You said you people twice. You questioned whether she could afford to be here. You demanded to see credentials, asked for names, treated her like an intruder in a space she had every right to occupy." Marcus's voice never rose, but it cut deeper than shouting ever could. "Let me ask you something, Patricia. When white passengers sit in first class, do you demand to see their boarding passes? Do you question how they afforded their tickets? Do you wonder if they're in the right place?" Patricia's lips trembled. Behind her, the other first-class passengers were very carefully not making eye contact. The man in the expensive suit was staring intently at his phone. The woman with the magazine had somehow made herself very small in her seat. Morrison stepped forward. "Mr. Kingston, Mrs. Kingston, on behalf of the airline, I sincerely apologize for this incident. Mrs. Whitmore will be removed from the flight immediately and will conduct a full investigation." "She'll be removed," Patricia's voice cracked. "I haven't done anything wrong. I was simply trying to get my assigned seat. I have rights. You can't just kick me off because some pilot decided to use his influence to." "Some pilot?" Marcus's laugh was void of humor. "James, tell her." Morrison cleared his throat. "Mrs. Whitmore, this aircraft isn't part of our commercial fleet. This is a privately owned jet that Captain Kingston occasionally makes available for charter flights. You're not flying commercial. You're flying on his personal property." The words hung in the air like smoke after an explosion. Patricia's face went through several colors, white, red, purple, back to white. His personal. The jet you're standing in? Marcus said conversationally. I bought it 3 years ago. I own it outright. This isn't a commercial flight that you booked through the airline website. This is a private charter that I arranged through my aviation company, which coincidentally James here helps me manage. The airline you've been claiming loyalty status with. They contracted my plane for this route because their aircraft was undergoing maintenance. But Patricia looked around wildly as if the cabin itself might offer her some escape route from this nightmare. I paid for a first-class ticket. I have confirmation. I booked through the normal channels. You booked through a charter broker, Morrison explained, his voice tight with embarrassment. The broker contracts with various aircraft owners for specific routes. You were never flying commercial. You were always flying private on Mr. Kingston's jet. Amara felt a small spark of satisfaction, though she kept her expression neutral. Marcus had been planning this trip for months as a surprise, combining a business charter with a family getaway to Martha's Vineyard for Zoe's birthday. He'd even arranged to pilot the flight himself, which was supposed to be the big reveal when they landed. But now Patricia Whitmore had turned their private family moment into a very public lesson about assumptions and consequences. So when you demanded your seat, Marcus continued, his voice deadly calm, you were demanding a seat on MY plane. When you screamed about your rights and your status and your 15 years of loyalty, you were screaming at MY wife and daughter, on my aircraft, that I own. Patricia seemed to be having trouble breathing. Her expensive suit suddenly looked less like armor and more like a costume. I didn't know. How could I have known? She didn't say anything. She didn't tell me. Why should she have to? Amara spoke up, her voice steady. Why should I have to justify my presence? Why should I have to prove I belong? Why couldn't you simply accept that a black woman in first class might actually be supposed to be there? I wasn't thinking about. I didn't mean it like. You're twisting my words. I'm repeating your words verbatim. Amara pulled out her phone. And just so we're clear, I recorded the entire conversation. From the moment you said that is MY seat to the moment you suggested my daughter doesn't belong here. Would you like to hear it played back? Patricia's eyes widened with something approaching panic. You recorded me without permission? That's illegal, that's. Actually, Morrison interjected quietly, she's well within her rights. This is a private aircraft, not a public space. And given that you were creating a disturbance, documentation is not only legal but advisable. The teenage boy across the aisle raised his hand slightly. I got it on video too, the whole thing. Already sent it to my sister. He paused. She works for a news blog. She's asking if she can post it. Patricia made a sound like a wounded animal. No, you can't. This is all a misunderstanding. I never meant. I'm not a racist. I have black friends. I donate to charity. This is being blown completely out of proportion. Marcus held up a hand. Just stop talking. Every word you say is making this worse. He turned to Morrison. James, I want her off my plane now. Mr. Kingston, I understand your frustration, but we're scheduled to depart in 10 minutes. If we deplane a passenger now, then we deplane a passenger. I'm not flying my wife and daughter across the Atlantic with someone who just spent 10 minutes verbally abusing them. I'm not putting my family in that position, and I'm certainly not going to pretend this didn't happen just to keep your schedule. Morrison nodded slowly. Understood. Mrs. Whitmore, please gather your belongings. We'll arrange ground transportation back to the terminal and help you book alternative travel. But I have meetings in London tomorrow. I have business. I can't just... You should have thought of that, Amara said quietly, before you decided that a black woman and her child didn't deserve basic human dignity. Patricia Whitmore gathered her carry-on with shaking hands, her face a mask of humiliation and rage. As she passed Amara, she paused, mouth opening as if to say something, an apology maybe or one last protest. Don't, Marcus said simply, just leave. She left. The cabin remained silent as Morrison escorted her out. The other passengers sat frozen, some looking guilty, others relieved, a few still pretending this spectacle hadn't happened 3 feet from their designer luggage. Zoe tugged on Marcus's flight suit. Daddy, can we still go see Grandma? The mean lady ruined the surprise. Marcus crouched down again, cupping his daughter's face in his hands. The surprise isn't ruined, Princess. We're still going to Martha's Vineyard. We're still going to have the best birthday weekend ever. And nobody is going to make you feel like you don't belong ever again. But as Amara watched her husband hold their daughter, she knew that wasn't true. There would be more Patricia Whitmores, more assumptions, more moments where they'd have to prove their right to exist in spaces others moved through without question. What Patricia didn't know, what none of them knew yet, was that this moment was being live-tweeted by the teenager across the aisle. That Patricia's full name and company affiliation were already trending. That her husband's firm was fielding calls from journalists. That the video was spreading across social media like wildfire. And that Marcus Kingston wasn't just a decorated pilot who owned a private jet. But what happened next changed everything. The plane lifted off 40 minutes late. In the quiet hum of the cabin cruising at 30,000 feet, Amara tried to focus on the clouds outside Zoe's window, tried to let the gentle rumble of engines soothe away the adrenaline still coursing through her veins. But her phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Text after text, email after email, news alerts lighting up her screen like fireworks. Amara, Sophie approached hesitantly, holding a tablet. I'm so sorry to disturb you, but you should see this. The headline blazed across the screen. White woman removed from flight after racist tirade against black doctor. Didn't know she was harassing the owner's wife. Below it, the video, crystal clear, perfectly lit by the cabin's ambient lighting. Patricia's voice. You people always do this, always play the race card when you don't get your way. The view count was already at 2.3 million. Oh God, Amara breathed. It's on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Sophie said quietly. That kid Tyler, he posted it with the caption, Karen learns expensive lesson on private jet. It went viral in under an hour. News outlets are picking it up. People are identifying her. They found her LinkedIn, her husband's company, everything. Amara's stomach churned. This wasn't what she wanted. She'd wanted Patricia to leave, to face consequences, yes. But this was a digital execution, a public crucifixion in real time. Morrison Financial is trending, Sophie continued, scrolling through the tablet. People are calling for boycotts. Patricia Whitmore's Instagram is flooded with comments. Her husband's company is getting review bombed. Someone started a Change.org petition to get her banned from all airlines. From the cockpit, Marcus's voice came over the intercom. Amara, can you come up here for a minute? She made her way forward, past passengers who now looked at her with a mixture of awe and discomfort, as if she'd transformed from victim to something more powerful, more dangerous. Marcus was in the left seat, hands steady on the controls despite the storm brewing behind them. In the co-pilot seat sat David Chen, Marcus's business partner. Both men looked grim. Tell her, Marcus said without turning around. David swiveled to face Amara, his expression apologetic. Morrison Financial just released a statement. They're claiming Patricia was provoked. They're saying you were aggressive and threatening, that Patricia felt unsafe, and that she was defending herself against racial hostility directed at her. The words hit Amara like a physical blow. What? They're spinning it, David explained. They hired a crisis management firm. They're flooding social media with counter-narratives, claiming the video is edited, that context is missing, that this is an attack on a successful white businesswoman by someone playing the victim card. But the video shows everything, she said. They're claiming she was responding to things said before the video started. They're suggesting you initiated the confrontation. They've got talking heads on cable news right now debating both sides of the story. David's voice was tight with anger. They're trying to turn Patricia into the victim. Amara felt the walls of the cockpit closing in. This was the pattern she knew too well. The way the narrative always shifted, always bent, always found a way to make the person calling out racism the real aggressor. Show her the rest, Marcus said quietly. David pulled up another screen. Patricia's husband, Leonard Whitmore, is the senior VP at Morrison Financial. They're a major player in wealth management. $47 billion in assets under management. Leonard has connections to 3 senators, 2 governors, and about half the Fortune 500 CEOs in America. And, Amara asked, though she already knew where this was going. And they're threatening to sue you for defamation, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and invasion of privacy. They're claiming the recording was illegal. They're saying Patricia is receiving death threats because of your actions and that you're responsible for any harm that comes to her. Amara laughed, a harsh, broken sound. So she verbally assaults me and my daughter, gets removed from the plane, and now I'm being threatened with lawsuits. It's a typical SLAPP suit, David explained. Strategic lawsuit against public participation. They're trying to intimidate you into silence. They want you to delete the video, issue a public apology, and sign an NDA saying you'll never speak about the incident again. Absolutely not. That's what I told them you'd say. David smiled grimly. But you need to know what you're up against. Morrison Financial has an in-house legal team of 30 attorneys. They've already filed injunctions trying to get the video taken down from social media. They're claiming copyright violation because the plane's interior design is proprietary. Can they do that? Amara asked. They can try, Marcus said from the pilot's seat, but they're forgetting something important. He finally turned around, and his smile was sharp as broken glass. This is my plane, my proprietary interior, my copyright, and I've already licensed the footage to every major news network that wanted it for free. Amara blinked. You what? As soon as the video went viral, I had my lawyers send licensing agreements to CNN, MSNBC, ABC, CBS, BBC, anyone who wanted to air it. Perfectly legal. Morrison Financial can threaten all they want, but they have no legal standing. The video was filmed on my property with my permission, documenting harassment that occurred on my aircraft. David was grinning now. It gets better, tell her about the other thing. Marcus's expression shifted to something darker, more satisfied. Patricia and Leonard don't know this yet, but Morrison Financial. They use my aviation company for all their corporate travel. Executives, clients, international trips. We've been their exclusive charter service for 4 years. It's a $12 million annual contract. The implication hung in the air like thunder before lightning. You're going to cancel it, Amara said slowly. I already did. Sent the termination notice an hour ago. 30-day cancellation clause, perfectly legal. They can find someone else to fly their executives to Jackson Hole for skiing trips and the Bahamas for business conferences. Amara should have felt vindicated. Instead, she felt tired, bone-deep exhausted by the fact that even proof and witnesses and video evidence, still required weapons and leverage, and the threat of financial consequences to make people listen. Marcus, they're going to come after us even harder now. Let them, his voice was steel wrapped in silk. Let them try, because here's what Patricia and Leonard and Morrison Financial don't know yet. He nodded to David, who pulled up another document on his tablet, this one marked confidential in red letters across the top. What am I looking at? Amara asked. Marcus didn't just buy one jet, David explained. He bought 7. Kingston Aviation isn't just a charter company, it's a fleet. We have contracts with 15 different corporations, 4 professional sports teams, 3 major universities, and 2 government agencies. We did $89 million in revenue last year. Amara's eyes widened. She knew Marcus had done well, knew his business was successful, but she'd been so focused on her own career, her own world of medicine and emergency rooms and saving lives, that she hadn't fully grasped the scale of what he'd built. Morrison Financial thinks they can intimidate us with their lawyers and their connections, Marcus continued. They think because they manage $47 billion, they're untouchable. They think a black pilot and his doctor wife will fold under pressure. They don't know you very well, Amara said softly. No, they don't, but they're about to learn. Marcus stood up, his frame filling the cockpit. David, send the press release. Wait, what press release? Amara asked. David was already typing. We prepared a statement from Kingston Aviation. It details the incident, affirms our zero-tolerance policy for discrimination and harassment, announces the termination of our contract with Morrison Financial, and invites any other corporations that share our values to contact us about exclusive charter services. You're turning this into marketing. I'm turning this into a teaching moment, Marcus corrected. Every corporation that flies with us needs to know that we don't just transport people, we protect them. All people, regardless of race, gender, religion, or any other characteristic. And if they can't agree to basic human dignity for all passengers, they can find another airline. Amara's phone buzzed again. This time it was a call from a number she recognized. Her hands trembled as she answered. Dr. Kingston, this is Sharon Liu from CNN. We're doing a segment on the incident. We'd love to have you on for an interview tonight if possible. We want to hear your side of the story. Before Amara could respond, 3 more calls came through simultaneously. MSNBC, The Washington Post, Good Morning America. They're circling, David observed. This isn't just a viral video anymore. This is a national conversation about discrimination, privilege, and accountability. I don't want to be a national conversation, Amara said quietly. I just wanted to fly to Martha's Vineyard with my daughter for her birthday. Marcus took her hand. I know, but this is bigger than us now. Patricia Whitmore said out loud what a lot of people think quietly. She gave voice to assumptions that Black people face every single day. And now we have a choice. We can let Morrison Financial spin this into a story about an overly sensitive Black woman overreacting to an innocent mistake, or we can tell the truth. The truth, Amara repeated. And what is the truth? That you did nothing wrong. That you don't owe anyone an explanation for existing in a space you paid for. That your daughter deserves to grow up in a world where her presence isn't questioned. That sometimes the only way to change a broken system is to expose it, loudly, publicly, undeniably. The plane touched down in Martha's Vineyard 90 minutes later. Instead of the quiet family arrival Marcus had planned, they were greeted by a wall of cameras and reporters. Dr. Kingston, how do you feel about Patricia Whitmore's counter-accusations? Captain Kingston, is it true you're worth over $200 million? Dr. Kingston, will you be pressing charges? Marcus had arranged for private security, but even they struggled to create a path through the media scrum. Amara clutched Zoe close, shielding her daughter from the chaos, while Marcus moved ahead with the focused intensity of a man who'd navigated far worse storms than this. They made it to the waiting SUV. Once inside, with the tinted windows blocking out the frenzy, Zoe finally spoke. Mommy, why are all those people here? Are we in trouble? No, baby, we're not in trouble. Then why are they yelling? How do you explain this to a 6-year-old? How do you tell your child that her mother's humanity became a trending hashtag, that a moment of discrimination became entertainment for millions, that their private pain was now public property? Sometimes, Amara said carefully, when something unfair happens, people want to talk about it. They want to make sure it doesn't happen to anyone else. Did something unfair happen to us? Yes. Is that lady going to say sorry? Amara met Marcus's eyes in the rearview mirror. I don't think so, sweetie. At the beachfront estate Marcus had rented for the weekend, they found temporary sanctuary. But even here, with the ocean rolling peacefully outside and Zoe distracted by a birthday cake big enough to feed 20, the storm followed them. Marcus's phone rang, David's name on the screen. Turn on CNN, David said without preamble. They turned on the TV, and there was Patricia Whitmore, perfectly coiffed and composed, sitting across from a sympathetic interviewer. I've never been treated so poorly in my entire life, Patricia was saying, her eyes glistening with manufactured tears. I was simply trying to get my assigned seat. I had a confirmation number. I had proof. And this woman, Dr. Kingston, she became immediately hostile and aggressive. That's a lie, Amara breathed. She started recording me without permission, which I believe is illegal in many states. She sixed her husband on me, this imposing, intimidating man who used his position of authority to have me removed from the flight. And now I'm receiving death threats. Hundreds of them. People are threatening my children, my husband, my elderly mother, all because I asked for my assigned seat. The interviewer leaned forward. Some people are saying this was clearly a case of racial discrimination, that you made assumptions about Dr. Kingston based on her race. How do you respond to that? Patricia's face crumpled, a masterclass in performed victimhood. I am not a racist. I have dedicated my life to charity work. I've donated hundreds of thousands of dollars to causes supporting underprivileged communities. I have black colleagues, black friends. The suggestion that I would discriminate against someone because of their skin color is deeply hurtful and completely false. But witnesses say, witnesses who were coached by her husband, who owns the plane, don't you see? Captain Kingston set this whole thing up. He orchestrated this confrontation so his wife could play the victim and get sympathy. It's a shakedown. They're probably going to sue us for millions. Amara felt sick. She watched as Patricia's performance continued, watched as the interviewer's questions became softer, more sympathetic, watched as the narrative shifted in real time from accountability to victimization. They're good, Marcus said quietly. I'll give them that, they're very good. So what do we do? Marcus was already pulling out his phone. We show them exactly who they're dealing with. He made 3 calls, the first to his lawyers, the second to his business manager, the third to someone he only referred to as an old friend from the Navy. 10 minutes later, Marcus's laptop showed a video conference with 7 people on screen. All black, all powerful, all looking very interested in what Marcus had to say. Ladies and gentlemen, Marcus began, thank you for taking my call on short notice. I want to tell you about something that happened to my wife today. Amara recognized some of the faces. Judge Angela Thompson, who'd just been nominated to the federal appellate court. Congressman David Wright, a rising star in Democratic politics. Dr. Elaine Foster, president of Spelman College, Amara's alma mater. Senator Maria Washington. Tech CEO Jamal Stevens. Civil rights attorney Nina Rodriguez. And someone whose face made Amara's breath catch, Dr. Vernon Hayes, the Surgeon General of the United States. Marcus Kingston, Dr. Hayes said warmly. I haven't heard from you since you saved my nephew's life in that air ambulance mission in Haiti. How are you? I'm well, sir, but my wife just experienced something I wanted to bring to your attention. For the next 20 minutes, Marcus laid it out. The incident, the video, Patricia's counter-accusations, Morrison Financial's threats and spin campaign, the systematic way they were trying to discredit Amara and rewrite what happened. When he finished, Judge Thompson spoke first. They're using the classic playbook, DARVO, deny, attack, reverse victim and offender. The actual perpetrator claims to be the victim. We've seen this 1,000 times, Congressman Wright added. Especially when black people dare to call out discrimination. Suddenly we're the aggressors, the ones causing trouble, the ones who need to be silenced. What do you need from us? Senator Washington asked. The truth, Marcus said simply. I need people to see the full picture, not Patricia's tears and carefully crafted victimhood, but the reality of what my wife and daughter experienced. Nina Rodriguez, the civil rights attorney, leaned forward. I've already filed an amicus brief in federal court challenging Morrison Financial's injunction against the video. First Amendment issues, newsworthy content, public interest will win. But that's just the legal side. You need the court of public opinion, too. Already on it, Jamal Stevens said. My company's AI division can do forensic analysis of the video, prove it's unedited, verify the timeline, show that Dr. Kingston's recording started after Patricia's initial confrontation. We'll have a detailed technical report by tomorrow morning. Dr. Foster cleared her throat. Spelman College stands with our alumna. We'll issue a statement supporting Dr. Kingston and highlighting her achievements. Valedictorian, Rhodes Scholar finalist, Johns Hopkins Medical School with honors. We need people to see her as a human being, not just a viral video. And I'll speak to this from a medical ethics standpoint, Dr. Hayes added. Dr. Kingston is a colleague in the medical community. What happened to her is what happens to black professionals every day. Our credentials questioned, our presence challenged, our dignity denied. The Surgeon General's office will make clear that discrimination in any form is unacceptable. Amara felt tears building behind her eyes, but they weren't tears of sadness anymore. They were tears of being seen, being supported, being believed by people who understood exactly what she'd endured because they'd endured it too. "There's one more thing," Marcus said. "Something I haven't told Amara yet." All eyes turned to him. Amara's pulse quickened. "Morrison Financial doesn't just manage money for wealthy individuals," Marcus continued. "They also manage pension funds for 3 major labor unions, retirement accounts for 2 state employee systems, and endowment investments for 12 universities. Combined assets under their management, $89 billion. "Good Lord," Judge Thompson breathed. "And here's the interesting part," Marcus said, his voice deadly calm. "Their CEO, Richard Morrison, Leonard Whitmore's boss and father-in-law, is Patricia's father. Leonard didn't marry into wealth. He married the boss's daughter, which means Patricia isn't just some customer throwing a tantrum. She's the princess of a financial empire, and she's used to getting her way." The silence on the call was electric. "That changes things," Congressman Wright said slowly. "This isn't just about one racist incident on a plane. This is about power, privilege, and what happens when people who have never faced consequences suddenly face them." "Exactly," Marcus agreed. "And Richard Morrison, who should be doing damage control and apologizing, is instead doubling down. He's using his company's resources to attack my wife. He's threatening lawsuits, pressuring social media platforms, calling in political favors. He's making this personal." "Then we make it political," Senator Washington said. "3 of those pension funds Morrison Financial manages. They're in my state. And I chair the committee that oversees fiduciary compliance for public employee retirement systems. I think it's time we did an audit. Make sure Morrison Financial is meeting all their legal obligations, not using pension money inappropriately, maintaining proper ethical standards." Nina Rodriguez smiled. "And I'll file a formal complaint with the SEC. Nothing that will stick, probably, but enough to tie them up in investigations and depositions for the next year. Make their life difficult the way they're making yours difficult." "I can get this story on 60 Minutes, another voice said. Someone Marcus must have added to the call while Amara wasn't paying attention. "Full investigation. Patricia's history of complaints against service workers, minorities, anyone she deemed beneath her. I've already got 3 former employees willing to talk on camera about her behavior." Amara watched as the battle plan came together, piece by piece, phone call by phone call. These were people who'd spent their lives navigating systems designed to exclude them, who'd learned not just to survive, but to wield power in ways the Patricia Whitmores of the world never expected. "Marcus," Amara said quietly, "can I talk to you for a minute, privately?" They stepped away from the screen. Outside, the sun was setting over Martha's Vineyard, painting the ocean in shades of gold and crimson. Zoe was on the beach with security, collecting shells, blissfully unaware of the war being planned in her honor. "This is a lot," Amara said. "Federal investigations, media campaigns, all these powerful people mobilizing. Part of me wonders if it's too much, if we're escalating this beyond what it needs to be." Marcus took her hands. "Do you remember what you told me after George Floyd was murdered, after Breonna Taylor, after Ahmaud Arbery?" Amara nodded slowly. "You said that every single black person in America carries the weight of these moments. That we're all George, we're all Breonna, we're all Ahmaud. Because it could be us tomorrow, next week, next year. You said that the only way anything changes is if people with power use it to protect people without it." "I remembers. Well, baby, we have power now. I have money, connections, resources. You have credentials, respect, a platform. And Zoe," his voice broke slightly, "Zoe is going to grow up in a world where she sees her parents fight back, where she sees that discrimination has consequences, where she learns that being black doesn't mean being silent." Amara looked out at her daughter on the beach, 6 years old and perfect, collecting shells like they were treasures. "Okay," she said. "Okay, let's do this, but on one condition." "What's that?" "We do it the right way. We don't lie, we don't exaggerate, we don't become what they're accusing us of being. We tell the truth, calmly, clearly, undeniably. We let the video speak for itself, and we make it clear that this isn't about revenge, it's about change. Marcus smiled. That's why I love you. You're the moral compass even when I want to be the storm. They returned to the video call. All right, Marcus said, here's what we're going to do. The next 72 hours were a masterclass in strategic warfare. Judge Thompson's court issued a ruling that the video constituted newsworthy content in the public interest and could not be censored. Morrison Financial's injunction was dissolved. Jamal Stevens' tech company released a detailed forensic analysis proving the video was completely unedited and that the audio timeline matched Patricia's visible mouth movements, proving nothing was taken out of context. Senator Washington's committee announced a routine compliance audit of all public pension funds managed by Morrison Financial. The audit would take approximately 6 months. The SEC received a formal complaint from Nina Rodriguez alleging potential conflicts of interest in Morrison Financial's internal governance structure, specifically questioning whether having the CEO's daughter married to a senior VP created ethical issues. 60 Minutes announced a full investigation into privilege, discrimination, and accountability in America's first-class cabins. And Dr. Amara Kingston agreed to one interview, one with Oprah. The interview would air live with no editing, no delays, no spin. Just Amara, Oprah, and the truth. Morrison Financial panicked. Richard Morrison, Patricia's father, called Marcus directly. This has gone far enough. Let's be reasonable men here. What do you want? Money? A public apology from Patricia? I can make this go away if you just drop the media circus. I'm not a reasonable man, Marcus replied calmly. I'm a black man whose wife and daughter were humiliated on my airplane, and you made a choice to attack her instead of apologizing. You made this a war. Now you get to see what happens when you pick a fight with someone who has more ammunition than you realized. You're going to destroy my company over one incident, over a misunderstanding. It wasn't a misunderstanding, it was racism, and I'm not going to destroy your company, you are, by refusing to acknowledge what your daughter did, by using your wealth and power to silence the victim, by teaching Patricia that she can abuse people and face no consequences. My daughter is receiving death threats. So is mine, a 6-year-old child, because your daughter taught her that she doesn't belong in first class, because your entire family decided that attacking a black woman was easier than admitting fault. Richard Morrison's voice turned cold. You're making a mistake, Captain Kingston. I have connections you can't imagine. I can make your life very difficult. Try me. The Oprah interview aired on a Wednesday night. 42 million people watched live. Amara sat across from Oprah in a simple black dress, no jewelry except her wedding ring, no makeup except light foundation. She decided to look exactly like what she was, a tired mother who'd been through hell and was done pretending everything was fine. Dr. Kingston, Oprah began gently, thank you for being here. I know this week has been incredibly difficult. Thank you for having me, and yes, it's been a lot. Let's start at the beginning. What were you thinking when Patricia Whitmore first approached you on that plane? Amara took a breath. I was thinking, here we go again. Because this isn't the first time I've been questioned in a space where I belonged. It's not the first time someone assumed I couldn't afford to be there, or that I'd somehow stolen a seat, or that my presence needed to be justified. It's just the first time it happened on my husband's plane with cameras recording. Walk us through what happened, in your words. So Amara did. She described every moment, Patricia's voice, her expressions, her escalating aggression. She talked about Zoe pressing against her, about the other passengers looking away, about the familiar weight of having to prove her humanity to someone who'd already decided she was less than. And when she said your daughter ended up in places she doesn't belong, what went through your mind? Amara's voice broke. For the first time in the interview, she let people see the pain. I thought about all the black mothers who have had the talk with their children, about racism, about how people might treat you differently, about how you have to be twice as good to get half as far. And I thought, my daughter is six, And she's learning this lesson 30 years earlier than she should because Patricia Whitmore couldn't handle seeing a black woman in first class. Oprah leaned forward. Patricia and her family claim you're playing the race card, that this was simply about a seat assignment. Then let me ask you something, Amara said, looking directly into the camera. Why didn't Patricia ask to see anyone else's boarding pass? Why didn't she question the white man in 2A or the white woman in 3D? Why was I the only person whose presence required verification? Why was I the one called random and told I probably couldn't afford to be there? Morrison Financial released a statement saying you were aggressive and threatening. I recorded the entire conversation. So did a teenage passenger. Multiple witnesses have given statements. At what point in any of that footage am I aggressive? At what point do I raise my voice, make threats, or do anything except try to de-escalate a situation that Patricia kept escalating? They claim the video is edited. It's been forensically analyzed, unedited, complete. Every word, every moment, they're lying. Oprah paused, letting the weight of that accusation settle. Your husband, Captain Kingston, is a very successful man. Some people are saying this is about him using his power to retaliate against someone who upset his wife. That you're both overreacting. Amara's laugh was sharp. If Marcus were white, would anyone question whether he had the right to defend his family on his own airplane? Would anyone suggest it's overreacting to remove someone who verbally abused his wife and daughter? Or would they just call it being a protective husband and father? Fair point. And let's talk about power and retaliation. Morrison Financial has 30 lawyers actively trying to silence me. They're threatening lawsuits, trying to get the video banned, pressuring social media platforms. Richard Morrison, Patricia's father and the CEO, has called in political favors, threatened my husband's business, and used his considerable wealth to spin a narrative that makes his daughter the victim. But somehow Marcus and I are the ones abusing our power. Oprah nodded slowly. You've been very quiet on social media throughout this. Why? Because I'm not interested in making this about me. I'm interested in making this about change. Every single day, black people experience microaggressions, discrimination, moments where their humanity is questioned. Most of those moments don't get recorded. Most don't go viral. Most just get swallowed, endured, added to the weight we carry. But this one didn't. No, this one had witnesses, video evidence, and a platform. So I can either waste that opportunity by engaging in social media fights and public feuds, or I can use it to start a bigger conversation. About how we train people to treat service workers, about how we think about class and race and who belongs in certain spaces, about teaching our children, all our children, that every human being deserves dignity. And what do you want people to take away from this? Amara looked directly into the camera. I want white people to understand that racism isn't just cross-burnings and slurs. It's assumptions, it's microaggressions. It's the thousand small cuts that black people endure every single day. And I want black people, especially black children, to know that you don't have to shrink yourself. You don't have to justify your existence. You belong in every space you occupy, and anyone who makes you feel otherwise is wrong. The interview continued for another 30 minutes. Oprah showed clips of the original video, played audio of Richard Morrison's threatening phone call to Marcus, which Marcus had legally recorded, and interviewed character witnesses who spoke to Amara's reputation as a doctor and human being. By the end, Patricia Whitmore's narrative had crumbled completely. But the Morrisons weren't done fighting. 3 days after the Oprah interview, they held a press conference. Patricia stood flanked by her father and husband, reading from a prepared statement. I am truly sorry if my words caused offense. That was never my intention. I was frustrated about the seat assignment and may have expressed that frustration poorly. However, I maintain that this situation has been blown completely out of proportion. The Kingston family has used their wealth and influence to destroy my reputation, threaten my father's business, and put my family in danger. I am the victim of a coordinated attack designed to silence me and intimidate anyone who dares to question their narrative. Then Leonard Whitmore stepped forward. Morrison Financial will be filing a $50 million defamation lawsuit against Marcus Kingston, Amara Kingston, and any media outlets that continue to defame my wife. We have evidence that this entire incident was staged, that the Kingstons orchestrated this confrontation to generate publicity for Captain Kingston's aviation business. We will prove in court that we are the real victims here. The press conference was a disaster. Reporters immediately began shouting questions. Mrs. Whitmore, did you or did you not say, you people? Mr. Whitmore, how do you explain the forensic analysis proving the video is unedited? Mr. Morrison, isn't it true that your company is now under investigation by multiple federal agencies? Mrs. Whitmore, have you apologized directly to Dr. Kingston and her daughter? Patricia's face flushed. I have nothing to apologize for. I was defending my rights as a passenger. So you don't regret telling a 6-year-old black child that she doesn't belong? I never said that. That's not what I meant. But it's what you said. The video is clear. And that's when Patricia Whitmore made the mistake that ended everything. You people in the media are just as bad as she is, Patricia shouted, pointing at the reporters. You're all determined to destroy a successful white woman because it fits your narrative. You want me to be the villain so badly that you're willing to ignore facts, ignore context, ignore everything that proves I'm the victim here. I am sick of being attacked for defending myself. I am sick of having my every word twisted. And I am sick of being called racist when I have done more for black communities than that doctor ever. She stopped too late. The silence was deafening. Every reporter, every camera, every person in that room knew they just witnessed Patricia Whitmore hanging herself with her own words. That doctor, one reporter repeated slowly. You mean Dr. Amara Kingston, the emergency room physician who saved hundreds of lives, the woman who volunteers at free clinics, the doctor who was featured in Time magazine's 100 most influential physicians under 40. Patricia's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. Richard Morrison grabbed the microphone. This press conference is over, no more questions. But it was too late. The video of Patricia's meltdown went even more viral than the original incident. News outlets played it on loop, her face twisted with rage, her voice dripping with contempt, her mask finally slipping completely. That doctor? The phrase became a meme, a hashtag, a symbol of the exact entitled contempt Patricia had been denying all along. Morrison Financial's stock price dropped 14% in 2 days. 3 major clients pulled their accounts. The pension fund audit discovered irregularities that triggered additional investigations. Leonard Whitmore was placed on administrative leave. And Patricia Whitmore became the living embodiment of privilege facing consequences. 6 weeks later, Amara sat in her office at Johns Hopkins Hospital, catching up on patient files. The chaos had finally subsided, still there, still simmering, but no longer consuming every moment of every day. Her phone rang, unknown number she almost didn't answer. Dr. Kingston, this is Sarah Chen from Morrison Financial's legal department. I'm calling on behalf of Mr. Richard Morrison. He'd like to meet with you and your husband to discuss a resolution. I'm listening. He's prepared to issue a full public apology on behalf of his daughter. Morrison Financial will donate $5 million to causes fighting racism and discrimination. Patricia will attend mandatory sensitivity training and perform community service. Leonard Whitmore has been terminated, and all legal threats against you will be withdrawn. And in exchange, you agree not to pursue any further legal action against the Morrison family or their company. You release a statement saying you accept their apology, and everyone moves forward. Amara was quiet for a long moment. I'll discuss it with my husband and get back to you. She called Marcus. They talked for an hour. Then they called Nina Rodriguez, their lawyer. Then they called Judge Thompson, Senator Washington, and the rest of their informal counsel. The consensus was clear. This was as close to justice as they were likely to get. Patricia Whitmore would never truly understand what she'd done, would never fully grasp the harm she'd caused, but she would face consequences. That mattered. Marcus and Amara accepted the settlement. The public apology was broadcast on national television. Richard Morrison read it, his voice flat, his expression grim. On behalf of Morrison Financial and my family, I apologize to Dr. Amara Kingston, her husband Captain Marcus Kingston, and their daughter for the pain and distress caused by this incident. My daughter's words and actions were inappropriate and harmful. We acknowledge that Dr. Kingston and her family were subjected to discriminatory treatment that was wrong and unacceptable. We commit to doing better, to learning from this experience, and to ensuring that such an incident never happens again. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't enough to undo the harm, but it was something. Patricia Whitmore never appeared publicly again. She deleted all her social media accounts, moved to a different state, and disappeared from public life. Whether she learned anything or simply learned to hide better, Amara would never know. What Amara did know was this. Marcus's aviation company received so many inquiries after the incident that they had to expand their fleet to 12 jets and hire 40 new employees. Johns Hopkins Hospital saw a 400% increase in applications from Black medical students, many of whom cited Amara's example as inspiration. 3 major airlines implemented new mandatory anti-discrimination training for all staff. 2 states passed laws protecting passengers from being removed from flights without due cause. And Zoe, beautiful, brilliant, resilient Zoe, didn't forget what happened. But she also didn't let it define her. She still sat in window seats, still loved watching clouds, still believed she belonged everywhere her feet took her. On Zoe's 7th birthday, they returned to Martha's Vineyard. Same jet, same seats, 1A and 1B this time. There was no drama, no confrontation, just a family taking a trip. As they soared over the Atlantic, Zoe pressed her face against the window and said, "Mommy, I'm glad we didn't move." "Me too, baby." "That lady was wrong. We do belong." "Yes, we do. And when I grow up, I'm gonna make sure everyone knows they belong too." Amara pulled her daughter close, breathing in the scent of her coconut shampoo, feeling the steady beat of her heart. This was why they'd fought. Not for revenge, not for money, but for this moment. A Black child who knew her worth, who understood that her presence was not up for negotiation, who would grow up fighting for a world where no one else had to record their discrimination just to be believed. "You're going to change the world," Amara whispered. "We already did, Mommy," Zoe replied. "We already did." And in the cockpit, Marcus Kingston smiled as he guided his family toward the horizon, toward a future they were building, one flight at a time. Where are you from? Tell us in the comments below. And if you're loving this story, hit that like button and subscribe for more.